Welcome back to News Center, the second hour where we bring you up to date with what is making the headlines. Right now, I'd like us to cruise over to Parliament building where Agriculture Cabinet Secretary, that is Mwangi Kiunjuri, is appearing before the Senate had a committee on the maize crisis.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So that if there is any clarification you need from both, you can give.
So.
But it has more information.
Okay.
And it's a shorter fashion.
Okay.
It's about editing.
Okay.
Is this the 20-page one?
Where is the new fashion? The one we have brought up. Or you have already
20 pages.
The 20 pages.
Where is the old version?
That's the position? Okay. That is okay.
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 Sawa, that's okay. Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Michael Mbito, Senator from Zoya County, and a member of this committee.
Okay. Margaret Kamar, Senator Wasingiju County, a member of the committee.
Senator Tangula Bukoma, member of the committee.
Senator Dr. Langat from Bomet and a member of this committee.
Okay, maybe you can introduce so we know who you are with you.
Kitemaker. Which one? Can you say so?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. There?
It's okay.
Oh, yours is okay, it's set.
It's set.
Yeah.
Okay. CS Mwangi Kiunjuri, Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation.
Yes, I'm Professor Hamadi Boga. I'm the Principal Secretary in charge of Agriculture Research and also Acting Principal Secretary in charge of Crops Development.
I'm Anvil Sang, Acting Managing Director in CBB.
I'm Dr. Grace Kisip. I'm the Deputy Director in charge of Agribusiness in the Ministry of Agriculture and
Joseph, Minister of Agriculture.
Okay. Okay. That finishes the team from agriculture.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. And then the others are our clerks and the fourth estate. The lead clerk is Mushira and Modibo. Okay. That's the press.
Yes, I'm a member of the press. My name is Patrick.
My name is Enoch Sikon. I report for CBB.
My name is Oscar Kimani. I report for Parliament.
I'm Vincent Afante, reporting for Business.
Yes, okay. Since we cannot see your faces, we can only say thank you and welcome. Okay, thank you. So we will we'll start, Waziri. You know the system. You have been with us in this house, so you know exactly why we are doing the inquiries that we are doing, and we'll go straight to the answer. Yeah. We will go straight to the questions that we raised. We raised a number of questions with you. We want to know the current status of payment made to farmers for the 2017-2018 maize crop. We want to know the subsidized fertilizer purchase and distribution model also that is being used. And when you touch on the payments made to the farmers, you may wish to let us know whether you have distinguished who are farmers and who are not farmers in the payment schedules that you made. Number 3, we want to know the extent to which the ministry has aligned its parastatals to the devolved system of government, with a special emphasis on the roles of NCBB and the roles of AFC. We are asking these questions because we want to also get to know policy interventions that you as a ministry would be proposing to us as we clear this. During our trip, Waziri, we went to Nyasiongo in Nyamira County, and we came across beans full in a store, and we are told the beans are 10 years old, expired, and we wanted to know about the ownership and the status of those beans and whether anybody actually knows in the ministry that they exist. Because the farmers told us to open the store, and when we opened the store, they showed us the beans and they said expiry dates are on and they are expired, and we are wondering why they are still in that store. Maize received by NCBP, we would like to know the maize that was received for the year 2017-2018 season and the status of payment to suppliers. Of course, that repeats the question that we had raised earlier, but we are saying what was received from where? Because NCBP must know who delivered to them. Were they really, this outcry from farmers, is it true that none actually came from farmers and everything else came from elsewhere? And one thing that has been coming and disappearing, but was missed in that question, was the role of millers. What's the role of millers in importation, and how much actually was imported by millers, and where did they sell? The other question that was missed out, so that you can take that one at the end of these two before we go to supplementaries, is the listing of stores by National Cereal and Produce Board. The stores that we visited, not all of them are occupied by maize that belongs to SFR, as we were made to believe initially. We are told that some of the maize in the stores belong to individual farmers, some of them belong to traders, some of it belongs to millers, and specifically the large millers and the small millers are lacking maize to mill for some reason that is not clear to us, even though the crop is there. We also discovered that quite a bit of the grain that is in the stores has gone yellow. We saw the brown maize. Some of it is browning, some of it is yellowing. We want to inform you that we asked CAPS to go and test, and we have the results. But I'm sure you also have the results because the NCBP falls under your ministry. So we would like you also to make a comment on what is the status of the grains that are now currently in the stores. Are they really good for human consumption, or they are all condemned? So Waziri, you can take us one by one, and if there's any supplementary question, members can ask after each item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and once again we apologize. We tried to issue in the morning to seek your indulgence, but you could not get through. In fact, at one particular time, my secretary got to...
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we have accepted you.
Okay, I appreciate. I will go straight away to the answers. The current status of the payments made to farmers for the 2017-18 maize crops. During 2017-18 financial year, the government had targeted to purchase 2 million of 90 kg bags of maize at a total budget of 6 billion, which was available. The National Cereals and Produce Board started receiving maize from farmers on the 16th of October 2017 until 18th of April 2018, where the purchase was discontinued due to reported malpractice in the exercise, where traders posing as farmers were supplying maize to National Cereals and Produce Board. Despite the targeted quantities of 2 million bags, there was surplus production with farmers, which the government decided to absorb for the SFR. By the time of discontinuation in April 2018, the National Cereals and Produce Board had procured a total of 6,523,872 50 kg bags, which translates to 3,626,773 90 kg bags, worth 11,200,000,000 630 million from 12,207 farmers. A total of Kenya shillings 8 billion had been paid to the suppliers by the time the suspension, leaving a balance of 3.575 billion. A total of 3,797 farmers were fully paid by the time of suspension. Any further payment was stopped as recommended by EACC in July 2018, awaiting the investigation on the malpractice and authentication reports of the genuine farmers from traders by a multi-agency team that was formed. Delayed payments were also attributed to lack of funds. After the authentication report by the multi-agency team and investigation by EACC, Kenya shillings 1.4 billion was released by the National Treasury to settle part of the farmers' debts. However, the Strategic Food Reserve Oversight Board tenure had expired in August 2018 and could not authorize the payments. The new board was gazetted on the 27th of September 2018 and convened in early October to authorize the payment of Kenya shillings 1.5 billion, which we started paying on the 5th of October. The payment to farmers is ongoing. We expected by the close of yesterday they would have paid all the farmers, and we believe that happened, or it will happen. National Cereals and Produce Board purchased 6.52 million of 50 bags of maize in 2017-2018, worth 11.63 billion from farmers. So far, Kenya shillings 9.41 billion has already been paid, leaving a balance of Kenya shillings 1.2 billion, 180 million, broken down as follows. Kenya shillings 1.4 billion for 152 claims under investigations. Kenya shillings 429 million for 74 farmers whose deliveries do not match the authorized quantities by the vetting committee. Let me explain. These farmers, you get, when we went vetting, a farmer owns, for example, owns 10 acres of land. If you look at the capacity, the maximum they can be able to produce in an acre, and I'm happy that most of you come from those regions, you can do 25 bags. So you expect if you have 10 acres, a farmer should only be able to give you 250 bags. But you realize the same farmer supplied 1,800 bags. Others supplied over 2,000 bags. The question is, where did you get the extra bags of maize? So those are the questions surrounding these farmers. As you realize, we have a balance of 429 million. If you divide 429 billion by 74, you realize that these farmers are supposed to be paid each 1,800 bags. And this amount is the outstanding balance. They had been paid before. Some other amount, this is balance. Then we have another 217 million for 44 farmers who collected their verification forms but did not return them to their respective depots. The ministry is waiting for further allocation of funds from the National Treasury to clear the farmers' debts. Of the farmers that we have no question, that's the additional information I'm giving, the farmers whom we are not questioning, they have passed verification. We now have a balance of 129 million. That's the amount we should get from Treasury to ensure that those farmers that we have no case against are fully settled. And we have written to Treasury so that they can release the money. Okay. And also further information on that, is that, once again, we have forwarded information to EACC and DCI because, again, of the 152 and the 74, we need their clearance. We already have their letter that stopped us from paying until they conclude their investigations. And therefore, we have written to them once again that they can be able to give us the clear picture. Whom should we pay? Whom should we not pay? Who are the persons of interest? So that we can settle this matter once and for all. Can I continue too? Or?
Yeah. Finish everything.
Okay. All right.
And 2, subsidized fertilizer purchase and distribution model. Introduction, fertilizer price stabilization plan started in 2008 as a part of a budget declaration following the periods that fertilizer prices escalated worldwide beyond the farmers' reach. The plan was to allow the government procure about 25% to 30% of the country's conventional fertilizer requirements and selling to farmers at subsidized prices. Fertilizer subsidy strategic objectives was 1, to stabilize prices of fertilizer, to make it accessible and affordable by most small-scale farmers in the country, reduce cost of production and agricultural commodities, increase productivity of major crops in the country. To increase productivity of major crops in the country. 4, provide capacity and mechanisms towards implementation of the 3-tier fertilizer cost reduction strategy. Support uptake of fertilizer use by poor and vulnerable smallholder farmers in the country. Fertilizer procurement processes. The quantities of fertilizer procured are based on the budgetary allocation, and the procedure is as follows. Before the procurement process commences, the ministry writes to the counties and requests them to provide their fertilizer requirements. The requirements are then compiled and nationalized according to available funds. The procurement then commences, and this has to comply with the recommendation that subsidy fertilizer procured annually should amount to 25 to 30% of the national requirement of about 650,000 metric tons, which means that we should procure about 160 metric tons. As a result, the private sector fertilizer dealers remain vibrant and in business. The procurement is done twice in a planting season, as shown below. Short lanes are 30%, long lanes 70%. Tenders for the short lanes are done in August and procurement process concluded in October, where those of long lanes are done in October and procurement process completed in December of each year. Due to long procurement processes, the ministry resorted to a 2-year contract framework. This current framework will expire in January 2019. We currently have 8-year contract frameworks for supply of subsidy fertilizer, which will expire in January 2019. The procurement quantities, this is done by a company called ETG, was given these quantities. Do I go through them or you okay?
Yeah, okay.
The above fertilizer are from import markets. The Agbo procured fertilizer, the other 7 farms are Agbo farms owned by women, youth, and persons living with disabilities, contracted to supply the following local brand as and when required. Those are the quantities. It's okay?
Yes.
Access to fertilizer by small-scale farmers. All fitted and registered farmers are eligible to access the subsidy fertilizer. The vetting and registration processes involves the vetting committee constituted by county commissioners and comprising of a chief county ward agriculture officer, women leader appointed by the people, and a church leader at the ward level, which visits the farm and access the acreage prepared for planting and recommended quantity of fertilizer. Then a form is filled and signed for the farmer to take to the nearest National Cereals and Produce Board depot to collect recommended fertilizer after making payments. You can see an attached sample of the form for fertilizer requisition. A small-scale farmer can access about 40 to 50 bags of fertilizer. Access to subsidy fertilizer by large-scale farmers. Large-scale farmers requiring more than 40, that is 50 kg bags, are fitted by the local, the county staff, and recommendation letter signed by the CEC, Agriculture, and is sent to the ministry headquarters for approval. The recommendation is done based on the fertilizer given to the county to release the fertilizer to the large-scale farmers after making the necessary payments. Fertilizer distribution. Fertilizer distribution to counties is mainly through the elaborate National Cereals and Produce Board depot network of 110 depots. The same farmers and also some farmers' cooperative societies can access it. In areas where depots are far away from farmers, National Cereals and Produce Board opens satellite selling depots at strategic points. Farmers' allocation to various, fertilizer allocation to various counties is based on intensity of agricultural activities, that is target crop coverage, acreage, county uptake trades, and seasonality at the time of distribution, that is for the long and short rains. Fertilizer distribution guidelines to ensure that the right farmers receive the subsidized fertilizer. The ministry, together with the National Cereals and Produce Board, developed guidelines for insurance of fertilizer. That is Appendix 2. It's attached. Only farmers in the national database, that is vetted and registered farmers, can access the fertilizer. Each county is allocated fertilizer according to the areas cultivated for crop production. Again, we have that list attached. The extent to which the ministry has aligned its parastatals to devolved system of government with a specific emphasis on the National Cereals and Produce Board and AFC. National Cereals and Produce Board is present in all counties other than the Tharaka-Nithi County, which is yet to get a space for locating National Cereals and Produce Board store. The county government, together with the National Cereals and Produce Board, decide on the farm input delivery methods, especially on fertilizer. Through National Cereals and Produce Board, counties have market for some of their produce, such as rice, beans, and sorghum. Most of the counties have access to National Cereals and Produce Board facilities, especially storage, weighing, and drying facilities. This relationship, however, is on need basis. It is working, but need to be well structured. Most counties have developed an arrangement with National Cereals and Produce Board on supply of fertilizer and seeds. And this paragraph, I also needed more clarification from my officers on this collaboration. As you mentioned earlier, it is also, I have the information of most of these cereal facilities, depots, being leased out to traders. And therefore, I also have requested to get a clear answer onto this. During the purchase of the strategic food reserve maize, the county government is tasked with the responsibility of vetting of the farmers with support from the ministry. Some of the National Cereals and Produce Board stores have been made available for storage of strategic food reserve for the counties and special program. These include maize, beans, and hay. National Cereals and Produce Board also has joint activities with counties on environmental conservation, talent development, community assistance, and wellness programs of social corporate responsibility. The government is in the process of transforming National Cereals and Produce Board as advised following the consultancy reports of Ernst & Young. The major recommendations were on separating the commercial and social functions of National Cereals and Produce Board and establishment of a commodity exchange market to enhance price discovery, creating a fair price where no one player can influence the price. The Ministry of Trade is developing a framework of commodity exchange. In addition, the consultancy report recommended decentralization of responsibilities and authority to regions and divisions to streamline services to farmers at the lower level. On AFC, following Executive Order Number 1 of June 2018, AFC is now in the National Treasury and Ministry of Planning. Ownership and status of the bean seed stock stored at the National Cereals and Produce Board, Nyanisongo, Nyamira County. There are some 27,028 2 kg packets in Nyasiongo, which according to KEFI's report are expired, but no expiry date is indicated on the package. The seeds were received in 2012 from the Ministry of Agriculture and supplied to National Cereals and Produce Board to be sold on agency basis to farmers at a subsidized price. Farmers failed to purchase all the seeds, hence the balance that remained in the stores. The question I was asking my officers, having realized that the stocks are not moving, why did you distribute to other parts of the country, to other needy farmers, and they were subsidized? The report I have is that we bought this from Kenya Seed. And the reason why we did so is that there was an outbreak, a disease outbreak that was affecting maize in the region then, and therefore need to request farmers to diversify to other crops. And therefore, the beans were taken there for them to take and plant instead of maize. That's the explanation given so far. And therefore, this stock should be condemned. The extent to which the ministry relies on research and soil testing in the purchase and distribution of subsidy fertilizer. Agriculture being default function, the ministry and CARL is working in collaboration with the county government on soil testing and research. The need to provide accurate information on fertilizer requirements for the different region crops of the county prompted a national soil testing exercise in 2013-14. I've noted the content of this answer, and I also informed my officers that this is not really answering the question you wanted, because the question is very clear, the extent to which the ministry relies on research and soil testing in the purchase of and distribution of fertilizer. What we are doing is that now we are working closely in collaboration with the county government. They are the ones who receive this fertilizer. And what we are doing is to ask them from the regions they come from to tell us the requirements of the fertilizer and for what purpose. If it is for the maize, they are advising us on which fertilizer we should give to them. For example, this season, Transoya requested not to be given DAP, and they used other fertilizers, bread. And you can see as a result, there was increase in production by 25% because they used the right fertilizer and they did liming the right time. And therefore, we are doing the same. If it is coffee farmers, we are asking them to provide us with the information. Lastly, we are in the process of doing farmer registration, and in this platform, we want to be able to be monitoring every 2 years the soil condition. Because if you realize the problem that is facing the country is that for a long time, we have not been testing the soils. And therefore, farmers are planting without information of the required varieties of fertilizer and also soil management. And this is leading to a lot of acidity in the soils. And therefore, in this collaboration, we have taken it upon us to collaborate with the county government because this is a devolved function. But the government is really supporting them. I think that should take care of that answer. The maize received by National Cereals and Produce Board for the 2017-18 season and the status of payment to the suppliers. A total of 3,626,973 of 90 kg bags worth 11,630 million was procured during the season from 12,287 suppliers, that is farmers, and a total of Kenya shillings 9.4 billion has been paid, leaving a balance of 2.2 billion, broken down as follows: 1.4 billion for 152 claims under investigations, 429 million for 74 farmers whose deliveries do not match the authorized quantities by the vetting committee, and 217 million for farmers who collected their verification forms but did not return them to their respective depots. I think I've answered. Is there anything that I have not answered?
Thank you, Asiri. I think maybe supplementary questions from members will bring in other issues. So let's go back. I think we start from page 1 so that we deal with the 9 pages, and any question and any supplementary that members have can come from there. Let's go to item 1. Item 1, if there is a member that has a question on item 1, Senator Mbito.
Chair, I'd like to find out from the Cabinet Secretary on item 1, where the government targeted to purchase 2 million bags of maize. How did you arrive at that figure of 2 million bags? Was there a meeting? What kind of food, the quantification? Was there are there documents that show that yes, we sat down and agreed that this is the amount of maize that may be out there ready for purchase? Because I actually have information to the contrary the actual target was 4 million bags. So are we very sure about this figure of 2 million bags?
Yeah, and maybe as we are answering that, at the point when importation was opened, what was the target amount that was required for importation? And we have seen your Gazette notice, and I think we raised this question yesterday, that during the same gazettement, there were 2 gazettes that came out. One was for milk importation, and the one that came for milk importation had specific amounts and period when the importation was allowed. But then below that was a gazette, was the Gazette for maize, and in the Gazette for maize, it was open. There was no limitation as far as amounts are concerned. And maybe what we are dealing with now is a creation from the ministry through the Gazette itself, because there was no limitation, so it was open for anybody to import whatever. And the period was given in that one, although we now realize that the period was also extended. So the Ministry of Agriculture, we are informed, is the one that requests for the Gazette. You request for importation, so you requested for an open-ended one with a period that was that had a deadline in October, but then in October it was extended. So maybe even also, as you are touching that so that we don't come back to it, how was the decision to extend arrived at, and why was it necessary? Because in other documents we are told that NCBB was asked to open the stores for farmers on 17th of October, 16th of October. And as they were opening the stores, the extension, 15 days later, the extension was requested. So what were the shortfalls at that time that necessitated an extension for importation? And did we know the amount that was in the stores? Because it was clear to us that 2016 was a low period. We didn't have much crop, so it was necessary to import. But 2017 was Pamba harvest. By 17, when the stores were opened, Trans Nzoia was already harvesting, Bungoma was already harvesting, and that's why we raised the question, because the farmers that we met said they only delivered for 2 weeks and they were stopped. By the time they were stopped, the crops were in their stores, and that crop is still there up to now.
Before you answer that, question.
Yeah.
CS, I need clarity on the Gazette notices. The first Gazette notice was issued on 13th April 2017, giving an open-ended quantum to be imported on or before 31st July. According to the Treasury, this was on the request by your ministry. Before the 31st July, on the 4th July, your ministry asked for a variation of that Gazette notice and extended the period to 30th September. Before 30th September, on 27th July, your ministry again asked for another variation, extending the period to 15th October. Why were these variations requested for? And because of those variations, a huge quantum of maize was brought into the country. From Mexico alone, you allowed to come in 1.4 million bags of maize, metric tons of maize, 1.4 million from Mexico. From South Africa, you're allowed to come in 248,956 tons of maize and many others. And in the process, the importers walked away with a profit of over 16 billion from the government. My last question on that, because there are many other questions I'll ask later, is when these importers, largely big maize millers, brought in this maize from Mexico and elsewhere, they delivered it directly to cereals boards and they were paid, making the astronomical profit of over 16 billion. If cereals boards had money to pay the millers who imported the maize and cost the country 16 point something billion, why didn't they themselves import the maize? And save the country the over 16 billion? I'll ask other questions later.
I have one question, Chair.
Okay.
From the status, the second page. During 2017-18 financial year, they say the government had a target of paying 6 billion. But when you go to the, I think the fourth bullet, a total of 8.53 billion had been paid to the suppliers by the time of suspension. What was the need of, I tend to question the statisticians here. The statisticians have got that ability to predict what is required. And I don't know what prompted now that the target was 6 billion, then we punished the government to pay 8.53 billion. What was the need of this target if I would have even assumed that if the accuracy level should have been closer to the surplus. But here, the surplus is too much. What prompted this surplus to be too much? The target of 6 billion, and then the payment went up to 8.53 billion. So that is my question.
Okay. Senator.
There are not too many questions at the same time, and hard questions.
Okay. It's better so that you clarify around that area. That's one item.
Mine was just to follow what Senator Tango has asked. And the Treasurer is of the view that it's actually a ministry that has not prepared the guidelines and the regulations to govern issues touching on importation of maize. That's why we have that mess that Senator Tango has pointed out. Since that is in your docket, it's here at your doorstep, why haven't you put in place these guidelines and regulations? And the Treasury is saying the blame is with your ministry. Number two, now from the report you have given us, the problem of malpractices on the maize industry is because you don't know your farmers. You don't have data for your farmers. Now, in the tea industry, KTDA knows its farmers. When they release fertilizers, they will send fertilizer to farmer A, knowing farmer A has 10 acres, and you will get this number of bags. Now, Wazir, what is so difficult for you to know your farmers, to have data of your farmers, so that when they are bringing maize to NCPB, you know farmer A has 100 acres and he can only produce this number of bags. Why should we have these suckers where you allow cartels to bring in maize, then again you start forming committees to start vetting? What is so hard for you to come and tell us this is my data of farmers? Now, it's the same problem on fertilizer. if you know the data of your farmers, you know if Wetangula is a farmer, he has 100 acres, he will require this number of bags. Then you take away cartels, because in Yansiogo we were told the traders buy the fertilizer from NCPB, they go and repackage and sell back to farmers. What help do you need so that this data can be in place, so that we don't get into this mess again next year?
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with the first question. I want to separate these two questions. One, imported maize and locally purchased maize.
Yes.
On the issues of locally purchased maize, the issue about the discrepancy, why we bought more of the maize, on what informed us. That's the first question. What was informing us to come up in the conclusion that we need 2 million bags of maize? And before I answer, I think there's so much of this information that you have given to the both Senate and Parliament, and that information would be of importance to you. If you can go back to Hansard, look at these dates that have been here with you, you can be able to get more information. What informed us to conclude that we set aside 6 million to buy 6 billion to buy 2 million bags? We look at the history, going backwards, the previous years, 5 years. The years before, like you look at 2016, the government bought 1.5 million bags of maize. 2015, we had bought about another 1.2 million bags. The other year, around 900. So cumulatively, for 5 years, the highest amount bags of maize we had bought was 1.5 million. How we arrived at 2 million, we thought because already the government had given a good price of 3,200 shillings per bag, that farmers will be enticed to sell to the government. However, you remember that the same year there was attack on fall armyworm. And again, government needed to support the farmers, and there was drought. The same year there was drought, there was issue of fall armyworm. And therefore we gave a good price because of the three issues to mitigate the losses from farmers. And therefore we expected that they can give us 2 million. We were surprised to receive 3.6 instead of 2 million. That is how we ended up spending more than we was expected. Number two, on the issues of now the imported maize. What I have in record is that the government procured a total of 10,547,418 90 kg bags of maize against the approved 12,643,300 bags under the government maize subsidy program by the aid of the program in December 2017. The questions that have been asked, I believe you also admit that they are not really part of what was required. I will attempt to answer. But if I will not answer to the satisfaction of this committee, then I will be seeking another date to come and answer that question. So how did we arrive to this? Did we come to conclusion that we needed the subsidized maize? You recall that at the time the government was calling for subsidized maize, already the price of unga had skyrocketed to about 150 shillings. And that translated to shortage of maize in the country. Already there was drought, as I had said earlier. And by the time the first Gazette notice was issued. That was on the 13th of April. It is true that there was shortage of maize in the country, and it was meant to cushion consumers from the high prices, which was a good intention. However, on the Gazette notice, the first one was very clear. It was to take effect until July, 31st of July. And that answers the question on whether we have guidelines and regulations. Yes, guidelines are there, very clear, and regulations. That for you to issue a Gazette notice, first, it must be able to be very specific on the quantities and quality. And again, I take you back to the question surrounding the sugar importation, because this is very similar also. The question that was the big question of the day when I appeared before the Senate and the Parliament was, why did we have open-ended Gazette notice? And therefore, for us, it is very clear that the ministry issues guidelines and regulations and advises Treasury accordingly. Treasury need to have been advised of, I've said again, the quantity and quality. Because without the two, then this thing you would have opened business to anybody.
So there was failure in indicating the quantity.
What you are saying, the quantities ought to have been there on how many bags needed to be imported to come in.
Yeah. Did we get to know actually how much came in that window before you requested for extension?
Those are the numbers now. I cannot exactly tell you how many bags of maize or tons of maize was imported by the close of 31st of July. If you need that information, we can be able to provide that information. The extension, again, if you look at the extension that was given July to September, again, it was limited. We had already regulated about the duration of time. The question that would arise is whether we needed to extend. That should be the question.
Yes.
It's not whether we extended, it's whether there was need for extension. And therefore, again, that is information we can give, because I don't want to give information today that I cannot challenge tomorrow, because I would imagine that whoever issued that Gazette notice had full information on whether we still had shortage in the country and whether we needed further mitigation. And therefore, that is information I can give. I should be able to give justification on why we opened further to 31st of July.
That's good. And then you can give us the figures. How much did we need at the beginning?
Yes.
How much came in the first
tranche
notice? And the extensions. Okay. So that you justify why extensions were necessary.
That can be given. That information can be given.
I'm reading a letter from the CS Treasury to Teach, dated the 20th September 2015. And it says, your ministry does not have guidelines and regulations. And your answer is that you have regulations on importation.
We have regulations.
Can we have the regulations in place? Because it seems you and the Teach
I'm not reading from the same
page.
Maybe, Senator, you can ask him to attach those regulations. It will be easier and faster for us.
So that we know what's happening in country.
Yeah.
But you know, CS, before you come to that, knowing how government ministries work, your ministry will do a draft Gazette notice and send to the Treasury for concurrence, execution, and publication, right? Now, when you look at the Gazette notice that you did, your ministry did, you may not have been there, but some of these officers have been there. In relation to yellow maize, it was very clear, including a specification that when the maize arrived, it will go straight to the feeds manufacturers. on white maize, which was now coming to compete with local farmers and destroy their livelihoods, it was very gray. Nobody said where the maize will be delivered or what will be done with that maize. And what happened? Millers turned into traders, imported huge quantities of maize and delivered to your cereals boards and were paid, and they walked away with close to 17 billion in profits. So my question is, if you have the answer now, well and good, if you'll bring fine. If cereals boards had money to buy maize from millers who brought from Mexico and wherever, why didn't they import the maize themselves and save the country money?
It's a good question. And with this Gazette notice, I think it answers part of your question. Because this Gazette notice is very clear that you have guidelines and you have regulations. It is properly done.
So what we could do is to have that guideline and regulation attached. So that we
but what I'm clearing is that with this, because it's coming from the same ministry, it's about maize. It's only the type of maize, yellow, not white. And therefore, I believe we have guidelines.
I don't
and
know
also,
if we are communicating.
we are not for your answer.
Or you are
to him.
Okay.
Yeah, to him, the answer on the issue of regulation. That is where we are. On the question that National Cereals and Produce Board could have bought the maize, it is true. If you look at the mandate of National Cereals and Produce Board, we are regulators. We are supposed to be able to stabilize markets and release maize when it is required. And for us to stabilize markets, that is why we have the strategic food reserve with 4 million bags to cushion consumers once again, so that if the prices are up and the prices goes up, then we can release more maize in the market to stabilize those markets. And therefore, once again, the question on why we did not buy and we used millers and traders, one, I'll give the answer, but still, when I'm coming with the other information, because we have agreed that I will still come and attempt to answer this question again. For now, the reason was that by the time we were declaring, we were issuing the Gazette notice, we needed maize urgently. We needed to cushion the consumers, and therefore we opened for traders and millers. Traders, the millers, we are not meant to sell directly to the National Cereals and Produce Board. They were supposed to buy and mill. The traders were also supposed to both sell directly to the consumers, and some was taken by the National Cereals and Produce Board for special programs, whereby there was also drought and government was giving maize relief to Kenyans. And therefore, I'll be coming up with a comprehensive answer to answer that specific question, why we did not import National Cereals and Produce Board, and we gave opportunity to others.
But the cereals MD is here. Can he help you and tell us why he did that? If you are able to pay the local farmer directly, you can be able to import maize directly and save the country money.
And unfortunately, not protecting my managing director, he's acting. You remember that the manager who was in charge then is already in court. And all senior managers from the National Cereals and Produce Board. And at the same time, my PS is acting. In fact, I have more information than them. Having served for 6, now 7 months, he's been there for 3 months, he's been there for the last 1 month. And therefore, it is only fair that we go and look, dig for the information.
So we can give you time to go and look at that.
Yeah.
First, we want to know, before the first Gazette notice, how much actually was required. The reason we are inclined to say you have no regulations is that, but you may have the regulations, as you are saying, somebody deliberately flouted the regulation. Because really, you cannot give us very specific requirements for yellow maize which is meant for animal feed, and we ignore the one that Kenyans are going to consume. Honestly, it's so unfair, because we did also realize when we were in Malaba that there are no standards on what crosses from Uganda to Kenya.
None.
And we are suspicious that if you track down where that maize went to, it may be the cause of the yellowing and the browning that is taking place, because there are no quality standards, there's nobody who tests them. It is just maize, and there is free market between the East African community. The lorries just cross. So please show in that one, clarify for us how much was required, why the extension took place, and then, so that we come out clearly, we would like to know the percentage of maize that was imported by the millers in comparison to the traders.
Yeah.
Also, we want to know where the maize of the millers is. Because if it was all bought by serious board, and we are told at 3,600, and they had concession at importation, then we may actually be